The rhythmic beeping of monitors faded into the background as quickened her pace through the hospital corridor. Something felt off. Ever since her father's phone call, an uneasy weight had settled in her chest, growing heavier with each step. "Miss Emily, you look lovely today," an elderly patient called out, with a gentle smile as she passed the nurse's station. Emily forced a warm smile, masking the storm beneath her calm exterior. Tucking a loose strand of chestnut-brown hair behind her ear, she replied softly, "Take care." To the world, she was the epitome of composure, a seasoned nurse with 7 years of experience, her neatly pressed scrubs and quiet confidence offering comfort to those around her. But today was different. Beneath her steady hands and practiced demeanor, a shadow of worry loomed. Something was coming. She could feel it. Sitting in the break room, Emily let out a deep sigh while staring at her phone screen. The message from her father read, "We're having a family meeting tomorrow. Victoria will be there too." The mention of her sister's name, the first time in 3 years, made her chest tighten. Outside the windows of Mount Auburn Hospital, the autumn foliage announced the deepening fall in Cambridge. Emily's memories drifted back to this season 3 years ago. Her sister Victoria was her complete opposite, model height, tall, with flashy blonde hair, always dressed in luxury brands with heavy makeup. She constantly drew attention as a luxury agent, valuing her connections with the upper class and continuously posting about her lavish lifestyle on social media. And then there was Nathan Carter. Just thinking of her ex-husband's name still sent a jolt of pain through her. As a cardiologist on the fast track to success, he cut an impressive figure, tall and slim with refined features. His appearance in expensive suits made him the envy of the hospital staff. However, beneath that superficial charm lay a calculating and domineering nature. Their father, Samuel Bennett, was a mild-mannered but strong-willed doctor. With his graying short hair and warm gaze, he had built a distinguished career as a cardiac surgeon, saving many lives. He was supposed to be enjoying a quiet retirement now, surely not dealing with this. Emily felt anxious, considering the reason for the sudden family meeting. Since losing her beloved mother 3 years ago, the family dynamic had changed dramatically. Her mother had been a kind and devoted woman who, despite battling rheumatoid arthritis, continued to care for her family until the very end. Why would Victoria, who had abandoned their mother's care and stolen Emily's husband, return now? "Emily, could you help with blood draws on the 4th floor?" Brought back to reality by a colleague's voice, Emily quietly stood up. Her serious and sincere nature, along with her consideration for others, were precious qualities inherited from her mother. The evening sky, visible from the hospital windows, carried a premonition of what awaited her tomorrow. Emily had first met Nathan Carter in Mount Auburn Hospital's cafeteria 5 years ago in spring. "Is this seat taken?" He had approached her with a smile, his white coat neatly pressed, during a crowded lunch hour. That day marked the beginning of their story. As a rising star in the cardiology department, Nathan Carter was quite renowned within the hospital. Casual conversations during breaks and occasionally overlapping shifts eventually turned into intentional coincidences. What had started as light-hearted exchanges gradually deepened into something more serious. "How about dinner?" His first date invitation had caught her slightly off guard. She sat across from him in a fancy Italian restaurant. Emily felt nervous, yet excited. The meal was served in courses. She had admired his ambition, his confidence. He had seemed to embody the kind of success and drive that she had always respected. For a time, it felt like a dream, until it became a nightmare. Nathan Carter's gentlemanly behavior gradually opened Emily's heart. On weekends, they would walk along the Charles River or enjoy art at the Boston Museum. Their romance progressed smoothly under the envious gazes of others. "I've been waiting for someone as sincere as you," he had said when he proposed at a restaurant near Harvard Square. Outside the window, maple leaves danced in the autumn wind. Tears rolled down Emily's cheeks as he placed the ring on her finger. The wedding was held in a church, blessed by both families. As Emily stood in her pure white wedding dress, her mother smiled with tears in her eyes. Victoria wore a somewhat reserved smile as she served as maid of honor. Looking back now, perhaps there was already something calculating in that smile. Their newlywed life seemed like the classic American dream. Emily lovingly prepared lunch boxes every morning, and they enjoyed brunches together on holidays. The apple pie she had learned from her mother became Nathan Carter's favorite. The starry sky they saw during their vacation in Cape Cod seemed to promise eternal happiness. However, the happy days didn't last long. The first changes were subtle. Nathan Carter started coming home later and later. Even on holidays, he would head to the hospital, claiming important surgeries. His complaints about Emily's home cooking gradually surfaced. "I wish we could eat at fancy restaurants like Victoria does," he would say. "As a nurse, you can't keep up with my social circle. Victoria has better taste than you, don't you think?" Emily endured such remarks desperately. All household chores became her responsibility, and dining out meant only expensive restaurants. Credit card bills kept mounting. Still, she endured it all for the sake of love. To make matters worse, her mother's condition deteriorated. Severe rheumatoid arthritis began interfering with her daily life. Victoria made excuses about being too busy with work, leaving all the caregiving burden to Emily. "I'm very sorry, but visiting hours are over." Even when colleagues at the nursing station reminded her, Emily couldn't bring herself to leave her mother's room. Position changes, feeding assistance. She continued supporting her mother as both a nurse and a daughter, utilizing her professional knowledge. "Emily, staying so late. I'm sorry." At her mother's weak voice, Emily forced a smile. Balancing work and caregiving was more demanding than she had imagined, but her love for her mother kept her going. Meanwhile, Nathan Carter's attitude grew increasingly cold. "Staying at the hospital again? Pay attention to me sometimes. Why don't you just leave the caregiving to a facility?" Such conversations became routine. Then came that night in the hospital parking lot. After working overtime, Emily was heading to her car. That's when she saw two familiar shadows embracing in a luxury car: Nathan Carter and Victoria. "Oh my, did we get caught?" Victoria's loud laughter pierced the cold night air. Nathan Carter, with a defiant expression, said, "Well, it's over. Let's get divorced." The divorce was one-sided. Nathan Carter demanded hefty alimony, while Victoria kept bad-mouthing Emily to their parents. Photos of the two at expensive restaurants kept appearing on social media. "Did you really not know? Everyone else noticed. A plain woman like you could never satisfy Nathan Carter." Victoria's words stung like poison needles. Shortly after, their mother passed away. Fatigue and emotional distress had rapidly worsened her condition. In her final moments, she whispered a small, "I'm sorry," to Emily. It sounded like an apology, perhaps about her sister and Nathan Carter. Victoria didn't even appear at their mother's funeral. From that day on, Emily left her family home and started living alone in a small apartment. It was a clean, one-room space chosen for its proximity to the hospital. Looking out the window, she watched as the evening sky was dyed crimson. 3 years had passed since then. The wedding ring had long since disappeared from Emily's finger. In its place, her mother's keepsake ring now rested, a quiet reminder of the love and pain that had shaped her. The Cambridge streetscape quietly gleamed, hinting at winter's approach. In the taxi heading to her family home, Emily reflected on the 3-year gap. Life alone in a small apartment, 12-hour shifts at the hospital. Days passed by monotonously. Occasionally, she would glimpse her sister and brother-in-law's flashy lifestyle on social media. Parties in luxury apartments, European vacation photos, and images of newly purchased foreign cars. These posts seemed deliberately crafted for Emily to see. "That family looks so happy. What a perfect couple." She would quietly scroll past the numerous comments. Contact with her father had been limited to monthly phone calls and birthday visits. It was his suggestion: focus on healing your heart for now. Emily had kept her distance, following those words. Then came that one phone call. "I want to have a family meeting. I've contacted Victoria." Those words made Emily's heart jump. Her sister and Nathan Carter responded quickly. Victoria immediately booked a luxury hotel, and Nathan Carter started contacting lawyers. They seemed to anticipate a discussion about inheritance. The taxi stopped in front of the family home. The Victorian-style house, built in the 1920s, still maintained the same dignity Emily remembered. In the garden, enclosed by white fences, the rose bushes her mother had cherished were carefully prepared for winter. Her steps toward the entrance felt heavy. However, the moment she opened the door, Emily noticed something was different. The living room had subtly changed. In her father's beloved study, there was a new file cabinet. Multiple PDF files were open on the computer screen. On the table, neatly arranged stacks of documents lay in order. Among them, she could see bills from her mother's care facility. "Glad you could make it." Turning around, she saw her father standing there. His salt and pepper hair and warm gaze were familiar, but his expression carried something resolute. In truth, her father had been quietly gathering evidence for 3 years. Hospital security camera footage, unpaid notices from the care facility, copies of her mother's diary, records of Victoria's cold text messages, and numerous social media posts showcasing the couple's extravagant lifestyle. Today's the day to reveal everything. At her father's quiet words, the doorbell rang. The sound of expensive high heels echoed in the hallway, followed by 2 familiar voices. "Still single?" "Hey, ugly, you haven't changed." Emily's body trembled slightly, but her father's expression remained unwavering. The Bennett family living room still held its dignity. Family photos lined the wall, and her mother's favorite classical music played. Bach's Air on the G-string, the piece she had cherished most. The faint scent of coffee filled the space. The two who had settled into the large sofa behaved as if they owned the house. Victoria crossed her legs, slightly swaying her expensive heels. Nathan Carter looked around the room with an air of boredom. Emily sat in a single chair, keeping her eyes down. In her simple dress, she projected the same modest presence as 3 years ago. However, her eyes now held a different kind of strength. "Father, I've consulted with lawyers about the inheritance." Victoria started, her voice syrupy. The word inheritance made Emily's brows furrow slightly. "Yes, we've been thinking about the future," Nathan Carter began, but their father quietly stood up. "Perfect timing. I have something important to discuss." His voice carried a core of strength, within its usual mildness. The evening light, falling on his graying hair, only added to his dignity. At that moment, the couple's expressions changed. Victoria's smug smile froze. Nathan Carter's arrogant demeanor showed the first signs of unease. They exchanged glances involuntarily. "First, let's talk about my condition." His words transformed the atmosphere in the room. "I have terminal pancreatic cancer." A heavy silence fell. 3 months to live. Tears glistened in Emily's eyes. However, this was a fact she had already been told. Meanwhile, Victoria and Nathan Carter's expressions underwent dramatic changes: shock, agitation, and calculation. Nathan Carter's medical instincts instantly grasped the gravity of the condition. "Father, we'll take care of you," Victoria hurriedly offered, trying to smooth things over. Her lips trembled slightly beneath her perfect makeup. "Yes, I can provide the best treatment," Nathan Carter added, attempting to emphasize his position as a doctor. However, their father quietly raised his hand, cutting off their words. "That won't be necessary." He slowly walked to his study. From a drawer, he pulled out an envelope, a thick one, bearing a notary's seal. "I want you to see this." The sound of the envelope being opened echoed unusually loud in the tense room. "These," Victoria's voice cracked, "these are records of your mother's care expenses." Their father began explaining calmly. "Victoria, records of the care facility payments you embezzled. Nathan Carter, falsified medical certificates." One by one, the evidence was laid out on the table. Security camera footage, unpaid notices from the care facility, copies of their mother's diary, Victoria's cold text messages, and social media post records. "That's not all." Their father turned the computer screen toward them. "I also have records from the day your mother passed away." The screen displayed security camera footage from the hospital, decisive evidence of where they were when their mother was critical. The color drained from Victoria's face. Cold sweat began forming on Nathan Carter's forehead. "You left your mother to die," their father said, his voice low and heavy, "and then lived luxuriously with that money." Outside the window, the snow was intensifying as the fireplace flames flickered. Their father continued presenting evidence one by one, his movements retaining the precision of his years as a cardiac surgeon. Let's start with the care expense records first. Spread out were stacks of bills from Mount Auburn Care Facility, 3 years of records, chronologically arranged. "Victoria, you received $5,000 monthly for mother's care expenses," their father said, his voice perfectly calm. However, no payments were actually made. Unpaid notices from the care facility were revealed one after another: red-lettered payment demands, records of facility staff concerns, all showing that their mother hadn't received the care she should have. "This must be some mistake." Victoria's voice trembled. Her perfect makeup was beginning to crack. "It's no mistake." Their father turned the computer screen toward them. "These are your bank account records." The screen displayed irrefutable evidence: care expenses being diverted to other uses, luxury brand purchases, overseas travel payments, car loans, traces of their lavish lifestyle, all meticulously recorded as data. Their father's gaze shifted to his former son-in-law. "Nathan Carter, you were complicit in this." Next, he displayed hospital records, false medical certificates written by Nathan Carter, reports understating their mother's condition, manipulated documents that underestimated her care needs. "As a doctor, Nathan Carter's words trailed off. Professional pride versus exposed misconduct, his expression twisted in between. And this is the decisive evidence. Their father pulled out a diary. Mother's final days, recorded in her own handwriting. Today, I tried contacting Victoria again, but was refused. I can't burden Emily anymore. As their mother's words were read aloud, tears flowed from Emily's eyes. I consulted Nathan Carter, but he wouldn't listen. The pain in my heart hurts more than my physical pain. Victoria's makeup had completely crumbled now. Expensive mascara streaked down her cheeks. There's more. Next, their father displayed hospital security camera footage from the day their mother was critical. The screen showed Victoria and Nathan Carter arriving, not at the hospital, but at a luxury restaurant. The timestamp mercilessly recorded the moment. Do you remember what happened that day? For the first time, their father's voice carried emotion. Mother waited for you both, until the end. Emily's memory returned to that day, the white hospital room, her mother's weak breathing, and her unfulfilled final wish. But we had work. Victoria's words no longer even qualified as an excuse. Work? Their father quietly opened another file and displayed social media records. Look at this post. The screen showed Victoria's post from that very night. Having the best night ever. Nathan Carter's face turned ashen. Their father took out the final envelope. This is my will. It was a substantial document bearing a notary's seal. Its contents froze the couple's expressions. All assets will be inherited by Emily. The air in the room grew heavy. And I've set conditions for you both. Their father slowly stood up. An apology at your mother's grave. Full repayment of the embezzled care expenses. And, he paused momentarily, the funds I had prepared for my treatment will all be donated. What? Victoria shot up from her seat, her brand name handbag falling to the floor. That's illegal! We have inheritance rights. You think you have such rights? Their father's gaze pierced sharply through her. Rights? For those who left their mother to die? Nathan Carter could no longer hide his panicked expression. His position as a doctor, his social credibility, everything was about to crumble. We have lawyers. Legally, their father responded coolly. All evidence is already stored in multiple locations, with lawyers and prosecutors. The air in the room froze. You have two choices: accept the conditions, or the rest didn't need to be said. Outside, the snow continued falling heavily. The warm winter days, once spent as a family, now felt like distant memories. Their mother's beloved Bach piece quietly announced its end. 1 year later, Emily had moved into her father's house and started a new life. In the garden, the roses were beginning to bloom once again. The flowers their mother had loved were returning to vibrant life. Miss Emily, congratulations on becoming head nurse Emily. Her reputation at Mount Auburn Hospital had steadily grown. With 7 years of experience and dedication to her work, Emily had been promoted to head nurse. She was deeply trusted by her staff, and patient gratitude was endless. Your devoted care back then helped me recover, Miss Emily. Whenever she heard such words, Emily was reminded of her mother. The image of a woman who possessed both gentleness and strength had shaped who she was today. The final 3 months with her father became an irreplaceable time. The daily nursing wasn't easy. Dedicated care after long hospital shifts, preparing meals, managing medications. However, each moment was filled with deep love. Emily, shall we look at the album? One peaceful afternoon, her father opened an old album with a nostalgic smile. There were photos of their younger days, her father and mother in their youth, Little Victoria and Emily playing together, a trip to Cape Cod, family pictures in front of the Christmas tree, happy memories packed into each page. "You are our pride, mine and your mother's." Those were her father's last words. On a peaceful spring morning, bathed in gentle light through the window, he passed away. In his hand, he held a photo of their mother. Meanwhile, her sister and brother-in-law's lives had changed dramatically. They defaulted on their luxury apartment mortgage and could no longer maintain their lavish lifestyle. Nathan Carter's reputation at the hospital plummeted. Unable to bear his colleagues' cold stares, he was forced to transfer to a small clinic in the countryside. The flashy posts disappeared from Victoria's social media. No more luxury brand tags, no more European vacation photos. Her real estate sales plummeted. Her social connections drifted away one by one. Their relationship also headed toward collapse. Mutual blame, shifting responsibility. Finally, they began living separately. "It's all your fault. You're the one who wasted money." The last time Emily saw them was at their mother's grave. Following the will's conditions, they came to apologize, having completely lost their former swagger. Emily quietly watched their figures. She no longer felt hatred or anger. She only sensed life's irony and the depth of karma. Now, Emily stands in her family home's garden. The fragrance of blooming roses drifts on the spring breeze. She sits on her father's favorite bench, basking in the gentle afternoon light. On her hand, her mother's keepsake ring gleams. Planting new flowers is a way to give form to her thoughts of her mother. Tending the garden means preserving family history. Cooking means inheriting her mother's love. In these small daily acts, she found true healing. "Samuel, Margaret Bennett, I'm happy." Emily's quiet voice echoes in the spring garden. "Thanks to you both, I can live strongly. Please keep watching over me." Bird songs gently respond. Newly sprouted flowers sway in the wind. Past anger and hatred had transformed into quiet strength. The past was no longer a burden. It was a precious experience that helped her grow. Her mother's favorite Bach, Air on the G-string, flows from inside the house. Emily smiles as she looks up at the sky. The spring light warmly embraces her.